In a parallel dimension, much like ours, the Japanese government faces the most dangerous foe in mankind's history. Koro-sensei, a sentient octopus-like creature, appears out of nowhere and destroys a large chunk of the moon. Though Koro-sensei has a harmless demeanor, the threat he poses to the human race is unlike anything ever seen. This is confirmed when the creature announces he'll be wiping out 70% of the planet. Naturally, governments all around the globe band together and send forces to take down Koro-sensei. However, the creature possesses godlike speed, making it nearly impossible for any weapons to hit him. After thousands of failed attempts to take down Koro-sensei, the world leaders realize they're powerless against the impending threat and resort to negotiations. Koro-sensei remains hell-bent on destroying the planet but offers the government a pact. The creature promises not to wipe out Earth for the next few months in exchange for a teaching role in a local high school. The request seems strange, but the Japanese government agrees and puts him in charge of Class 3E, a class full of delinquents and academically stunted students. Karasuma, an agent from the Ministry of Security, introduces Koro-sensei to the students. While addressing the class, Karasuma announces the government would offer a 10 billion yen reward to any student who unalives this overpowered creature. To assist their task, Karasuma hands the high schoolers a myriad of weapons specially designed to take down Koro-sensei. Excited to claim the ransom, the students go all out against the creature. They learn how to use guns and resume each school day by shooting several rounds of bullets at him. However, thanks to the teacher's incredible speed, they never manage to hit their target. After several days of repeating the routine, the students realize eliminating Koro-sensei will not be as easy as they imagined. This becomes even more evident when Arena, a veteran Terminator, ambushes the creature with high-tech machines but fails to land a single hit. After multiple failed attempts, the students begin training to enhance their combat skills. Karasuma and Arena help with this and organize lessons after school hours, tutoring the high schoolers on how to fight, use weapons, and develop ambush strategies to unalive the creature. The following day, 3 bullies devise a sneak attack to take out the teacher and force their classmate, Nagisa, to carry out the plan on their behalf. During class, Nagisa pretends to show Koro-sensei his schoolwork and attacks the teacher with a hidden knife. However, an experienced Koro-sensei sees through his act and easily grabs the weapon. Right then, Nagisa reveals the knife was, in fact, a decoy as he grabs the creature and detonates a bomb hidden under his uniform. Koro-sensei is stunned by this and vaporizes, leaving a slime trail while Nagisa is thrown across the class. While the other classmates rush to check on Nagisa, the bullies celebrate their victory and drool at the thought of the prize money. The bullies retrieve the slime trail, but Koro-sensei's corpse appears to be missing. Before the class can make sense of the situation, Koro-sensei materializes above them and has a furious look on his face. The tentacled creature explains his body has a hard skin that sheds once a month. This exoskeleton has an impenetrable layer, making it invulnerable to all attacks. As a result, Koro-sensei can survive one fatal strike every month, provided he sheds his skin. Upon revealing this, the teacher commends Nagisa for his fantastic acting. However, he is livid with the bullies for endangering their classmate's life. Kuro-sensei admits he can't punish them since he made a pact with the government not to harm any student. However, this doesn't mean he can't make them pay in other ways. Kuro-sensei warns the bullies not to repeat such a harmful stunt and threatens to unalive their loved ones if they disobey his rules. Later that day, Karma, another student in the class, returns from a week-long suspension. Karma is a class student who always gets in trouble due to his knack for violent fights. Upon arrival, Karma declares war against Koro-sensei and vows to defeat him no matter the odds. Over the next few days, the skilled fighter tries multiple head-on attacks to take down the teacher. However, just like his classmates, all his efforts prove abortive. During this time, the students start developing a soft spot for Koro-sensei and realize the teacher would go to any lengths to protect them. Seeing this, Karma comes up with a plan to exploit Koro-sensei's kind nature. The delinquent student jumps off a cliff with a gun pointed at the surface, hoping to get a clean shot when the teacher dives to save him. Koro-sensei sees through Karma's plan, but his kind nature prevents him from abandoning his falling student. Rather than jump straight down the cliff, the teacher makes a sticky net to catch Karma, saving his fall while also stopping him from using his gun. Karma is thankful for Koro-sensei's kindness. However, he remains hellbent on taking down the creature and doesn't give up on his mission. After weeks of unsuccessful sneak attacks, the Japanese Defense Ministry decides to take a more proactive approach. The government officials send in Ritsu, an AI machine equipped with multiple state-of-the-art weapons. Ritsu is introduced as a transfer student and joins the rest of Class 3E in targeting their teacher. Despite the machine's stacked artillery, Koro-sensei is still no match for Ritsu, and has no problems dodging all her attacks. Once the Defense Ministry receives word of Ritsu's failed attempts, they send in yet another transfer student. This time, the new entry is Itona, a trained mutant mercenary with tentacles similar to Koro-sensei's. Confident of his abilities, Itona challenges the teacher to a 1v1 fight. Koro-sensei agrees, prompting the duo to hold a wrestling match. The fight is pretty straightforward, with only one governing rule: anyone who leaves or is thrown out of the ring loses. Once the match begins, Itona goes on the offense and takes out one of Koro-sensei's tentacles in one fell swoop. Confined in the ring, the teacher cannot use his super speed to flee from danger. As a result, Itona quickly gains the upper hand after launching a series of strikes, dealing significant damage to his target. When the mutant kid hits Koro-sensei with a lethal blow, the teacher sheds his skin to block the attack, leaving behind a slime trail. Choosing to keep his distance, the teacher latches onto the ceiling and regenerates his lost limbs. However, this drastically depletes his energy levels and reduces his overall speed. Once Koro-sensei returns to the ground, Itona attacks again, prompting the octopus-like creature to dodge and swing from the ceiling. However, another slash from the mutant kid sends the teacher crashing to the ground, causing him to lose another tentacle in the process. With Koro-sensei severely injured, Itona has the advantage and moves to end the match. However, before he can deal the finishing blow, Koro-sensei grabs a knife and slashes Itona's tentacles, disarming him for a few seconds. While the mutant kid struggles to regenerate his injured tentacles, Koro-sensei uses his slime trail from earlier to wrap Itona and haul him through the window. With the mutant kid out of the circle, Koro-sensei is declared the winner while an unconscious Itona is carried out of the premises. After the fight concludes, the students realize Koro-sensei isn't as invincible as they originally thought, and this only strengthens their resolve to kill him. Later that day, the students try to get as much info from Koro-sensei as possible and question why he chose to tutor Class 3E. Deep in thought, the teacher reveals he did this to fulfill a promise he made to someone a while ago. When the kids try to pry for more info, Koro-sensei shuts them down, clarifying his answers wouldn't matter once he destroys the planet in a few months. Hence, the only way they can live long enough to get the answers they want is if they take him down. To aid their quest, Koro-sensei offers to hold extra classes with them on weekends. This way, the high schoolers get to spend extra time with their teacher and have more opportunities to attack him. The next weekend, all students resume for extra classes and receive one-on-one lessons with Koro-sensei. Using his superhuman speed, the teacher is able to create after images and give personal lessons to all the students at the same time. That night, the kids spend the night in school, and the girls host a sleepover. Irina is tasked to look after them and lectures the students about the Japanese underworld. She tells the kids about Shinigami, a notorious hitman regarded as the most prolific mercenary in the world. After the brief talk about the underworld, the students switch the topic to something lighter and talk about their love lives. Right then, the girls notice Koro-sensei in the room and try to question him about his romantic past. Flustered, Koro-sensei flees the area and hides in Karasuma's office. Upon learning why he's hiding, Karasuma questions whether the creature has a love life. Koro-sensei admits he does, prompting a flashback that shows him holding a dying young woman in his hands. The following day, the Ministry of Defense decides to switch up the high schoolers' combat training and replace Karasuma with Takeaka, a drill instructor and Karasuma's former colleague. From the first lesson, the high schoolers take a special liking to Takeaka, especially when he hands them takeouts before their training session. The new instructor quickly takes on a fatherly role with the students, but this turns out to be a facade for something far more sinister. Later that day, Irina does some research on Takeaka and finds some disturbing information about his past. It turns out the new instructor is a manipulative sadist who lures cadets with his fatherly approach, only to exploit the newly developed connection to abuse his students. Irina shares this news with Karasuma and asks him to pay close attention to the new instructors. The next morning, Takeaka has the students run multiple laps around the school during combat training. Minutes into the race, one of the students falls to the ground out of fatigue and refuses to continue the exercise. At first, Takeaka tries the kind father approach, but when the student says she prefers Karasuma's training session, the new instructor loses his cool and reveals his true colors. He slaps the student to the ground and aggressively picks her up to land a finishing blow. As Takeaka is about to punch her, Karasuma arrives just in time to stop him. Rather than face Karasuma head-on, Takeaka suggests the defense agent nominate his best student to fight him. Karasuma agrees and appoints Nagisa to duel Takeaka. Though Nagisa appears weak, Karasuma notes he has the wits and talents of a natural hitman. Nagisa is initially scared to take on Takeaka alone but eventually agrees. Confident that he'd win the fight, Takeaka offers to go unarmed while Nagisa is given a knife. While Nagisa brainstorms ways to end the match as quickly as possible, Takeaka is focused on drawing out the fight for as long as he can. Once the battle begins, Nagisa pulls a smart but risky strategy. Rather than fight, the top student innocently walks over to Takeoka, catching him by surprise, before pulling a knife and holding it to the instructor's throat. Takeoka is stunned by Nagisa's approach and falls to the ground, automatically losing the fight. The instructor rushes to his feet and asks for a rematch, but Nagisa refuses. Takeoka feels humiliated for falling for such a cheap trick and storms out of the school, but not before promising to have his revenge on Nagisa. Once Takeoka exits the premises, Nagisa's classmates race to his side and congratulate him on his victory. When the high schoolers return to class, they resume their attempts at defeating Koro-sensei. Okuda, the class's best science student, comes up with a direct but innovative approach. She uses chemicals to make a poison and politely asks Koro-sensei to drink it. Fascinated by her honesty, the teacher drinks Okuda's poison and instantly develops a reaction to it. However, after a few seconds, Koro-sensei returns to normal, proving the octopus-shaped creature is also immune to poisons. After yet another series of failed assassination attempts, Koro-sensei moves to continue his lectures. Right then, rain begins to fall, and a leak in the roof lets water trickle in. Within seconds, Koro-sensei's head absorbs a ton of water and swells up, slowing down his motions. Once the students point this out, the teacher speeds off, fetching several bowls to collect the dripping water. The high schoolers all find this strange, but most don't think much of it. However, Nagisa finds this detail very important and notes it as a potential weakness. While Koro-sensei is ready to return to teaching, the students no longer have the motivation to learn and are more focused on getting the ransom reward by eliminating their teacher. Koro-sensei is disappointed to hear they aren't taking their schoolwork seriously, and motivates them with a pep talk. The teacher explains the importance of having a backup plan and encourages them to take their academics seriously just in case they never receive the prize money. To keep them engaged with schoolwork, Koro-sensei offers them a deal for their upcoming exams. Each student who scores a top score in a subject will be allowed to destroy one of his tentacles. This incentive comes in handy as the teacher's speed significantly reduces with each tentacle he loses, hence providing the perfect opportunity to take him down. The students are stoked to hear this and decide not to let this chance slide. They put their heart and soul into their exam preparations and read hard to get the top score in each subject. To help them prepare for the exams, Koro-sensei adopts a practical study approach for the students. He flies them around the world to visit various landmarks and tourist attractions, using each site as a study tool. The teacher takes a student struggling with English to an English-speaking country, and uses the Tower of Pisa to teach a math lesson on angles. Thanks to Koro-sensei's innovative teaching techniques, Class 3E, which sucked at academics, begins to catch up with their peers and is well prepared for their term exams. After completing their final papers, Koro-sensei announces Nagisa, Okuda, Karma, and 3 other students topped the class in various subjects. As a result, the high schoolers would get to take out 6 of Koro-sensei's tentacles in their next extermination attempt. The students are overjoyed by this revelation and decide to make the most of this opportunity. Rather than rush to attack him, the high schoolers agree on a date to take out their teacher and devise a secret, elaborate plan to stop him. Luckily, Nagisa has noted all of Koro-sensei's weaknesses, which he's noticed over the past few months. Joining heads together, the class works as a group and applies all they've learned in training to plan their next attack. The night before their planned strike, the students spend the night in school and watch exploding fireworks from the rooftop. Realizing they've grown a soft spot for Koro-sensei, the kids wonder if they still want to go through with their plan. Right then, Koro-sensei joins them and asks them not to worry about him, as his greatest wish is for them to take him down. Upon hearing this, the kids are relieved and resolve to go all out tomorrow. The next morning, the students enact their plan and chain Koro-sensei to a massive contraption. Recalling the teacher's reaction to water days prior, Nagisa instructs his colleagues to fill the area with water. Koro-sensei briefly panics, but the teacher is impressed that Nagisa could figure out his weakness. Once everything is set, the students arm themselves with weapons and shoot off 6 of Koro-sensei's tentacles. This damage, coupled with the gushing water, greatly weakens Koro-sensei and slows him down. Seeing this, the students capitalize on the teacher's fragile state and fire 2 bullets straight at his face. Due to his reduced speed, Koro-sensei cannot dodge the oncoming shots and is milliseconds from being taken out when suddenly he triggers an explosion, knocking all the students out. When the kids regain consciousness, they find Koro-sensei survived the blast and is contained in a hard, crystallized shell. The teacher explains this is his absolute defense form that allows him to unleash a blast that takes out everything in his surroundings. In this form, he is invulnerable to all attacks, as the shell is strong enough to tank even a nuclear bomb. However, this form only lasts 24 hours, after which Koro-sensei must return to his original state. Right as he concludes his explanation, a handful of students start dropping to the ground. Moments later, a squad led by Takeaka pulls to the scene. The evil instructor reveals he poisoned the unconscious students with an unknown deadly virus, which only he has the antidotes for. Takeaka explains since his loss to Nagisa, he's been the laughingstock of the defense ministry, a development that has hurt his ego. As a result, the ex-instructor is hellbent on enacting his revenge on Nagisa and annihilating Koro-sensei to regain his status in the ministry. To achieve this, Takeaka asks the students to hand over Koro-sensei in exchange for the antidote, but Nagisa is hesitant. Noticing Takeaka's entry, Karasuma and Irina rush to the scene. Karasuma heads to Nagisa, who is contemplating handing Koro-sensei over. However, Koro-sensei is skeptical that Takeaka will keep his end of the bargain. While the trio debates their next action, a tentacle lunges at them out of nowhere. Karasuma pushes Nagisa out of the way and is thrown several feet away by the attack. Looking to see where the tentacle came from, the students discover it is none other than Itona, who Takeaka has apparently recruited. Karma joins Nagisa, and together, the two boys flee the scene with Koro-sensei while Itona follows in hot pursuit. Takeaka and his group also exit the premises and deter Irina and Karasuma from following them by threatening to get rid of the antidotes. Meters away from the school, Karma and Nagisa climb a phone tower to hide from Itona. However, the tentacle kid spots them and damages the tower's ladder. Stuck in the lower end, Nagisa passes Koro-sensei to Karma for safekeeping. Despite Karma's best efforts, it doesn't take long before Itona catches up to him. Being the best fighter in Class 3E, Karma manages to hold the mutant kid off for a while, using Koro-sensei's hardened shell as a weapon for attack and defense. After a brief fight, Karma tries to escape by heading up the tower, but Itona sends him crashing down to the same level as Nagisa. Wasting no time, Karma tosses Koro-sensei back to Nagisa, prompting Itona to set his sights on him. Moments later, clouds form in the sky and rain starts pouring down. Since Koro-sensei is in his ultimate defense form, he is unaffected by the downpour, but Itona gets weakened by the drizzle, causing him to lose control of his tentacles. Seeing this, Nagisa and Karma reveal they were aware that rain would fall later that day, which explains why they chose that afternoon to attack Koro-sensei. Luckily, since Itona also had tentacles, the duo suspected the downpour would weaken him and tried to stall until the rain came. With Itona's tentacles unable to move, Nagisa cuts them off, defeating the mutant kid and causing him to pass out. When Itona regains consciousness, Koro-sensei asks the kid to join Class 3E, and surprisingly, he agrees. After the fight, Nagisa receives a call informing him that Takeaka has kidnapped one of the students. The manic instructor demands Nagisa hand over Koro-sensei in exchange for their classmate's life. Hearing this, the student heads to meet Takeaka and takes Koro-sensei along in a nylon. Nagisa pleads with the ex-instructor to let Keano go and even grovels on the ground to show his desperation. Seeing this as a chance to humiliate the high schooler, Takeaka steps on Nagisa's face and pushes him into the mud, after which he kicks him. Realizing Takeaka has no plans to let Keano go, Nagisa gives up and hands Takeaka the bag containing Koro-sensei. Celebrating his victory, Takeaka opens the bag but is stunned to see what's inside. He soon discovers the object hidden in the bag is not Koro-sensei but, in fact, a random ball. Right then, the Class 3E students, led by Irina and Karasuma, storm the scene. Takeaka threatens to destroy the antidotes, but it turns out Okuda, the class's best science student, has replicated the antidote and used it to cure their sick classmates. With Takeaka having lost his leverage, the students easily corner and overpower his squad, dumping them in a cement bed. After the adversaries have been defeated, the Japanese Defense Ministry retrieves Koro-sensei and adopts a plan to unalive him while he's still in a crystallized form. They construct a giant tank and fill it with special pellets designed to destroy him on contact. Since Koro-sensei's defensive form only lasts 24 hours, once he returns to his original state, he'd be trapped and eliminated by the surrounding weapons. Before they seal the tank for good, Koro-sensei is allowed to broadcast one last message to his students. The teacher delivers a heartfelt goodbye speech, commending the kids for their growth thus far, and asks them to forge ahead without him. Despite their constant attempts to unalive him, the students have grown particularly fond of Koro-sensei and are devastated to see what appears to be his final moments. When the broadcast ends, the ministry officials celebrate his defeat while the Class 3E students mourn their teacher. However, moments later, the entire room is thrown into a frenzy when Koro-sensei materializes out of nowhere and appears at the back of the room. Shocked, the officials run away in horror while the students embrace and welcome their teacher. Koro-sensei doesn't reveal how he escaped the tank, but the students don't bother asking and merely celebrate that he's still alive. In the following scene, Koro-sensei returns to his teaching role while his students, per usual, try to unalive him. While staring out the window, the teacher reminisces about his past and recalls a scene with a woman at the brink of death, who is later identified to be Yukimura, Class 3E's former tutor. The movie ends with Koro-sensei swearing to keep his promise to her as he returns to begin the students' lessons for the day. The last term of high school begins, and the students of Class 3 are more motivated than ever to take down their teacher. With only a few months left until graduation, the teens are running out of time and need to eliminate Koro-sensei before he destroys the planet. Luckily, the perfect opportunity presents itself when the school festival rolls around. Having attacked Koro-sensei in the classroom for months, the creature has become familiar with the space and finds it easier than ever to dodge their attacks. However, with the school festival, Koro-sensei will be forced to navigate a new territory surrounded by distractions, making it the perfect time to strike. The Japanese Ministry of Defense also chooses to capitalize on this golden opportunity, and hires the services of Red Eye, a veteran sniper, to take out Koro-sensei during the festival. Karasuma tells the class of the ministry's plans and informs the students they'd have to defeat their teacher before the sniper does if they intend to claim the ransom prize. This revelation only strengthens the teens' resolve to take out Koro-sensei, prompting them to all look forward to the festival. Upon learning the students plan to attack him during the event, the tentacled creature gets excited and tells the kids a key weakness of his, which they can use on their next attempt. Though Koro-sensei has super speed, the teacher reveals he's physically very weak. As a result, if any one of the students managed to grab his tentacles, he wouldn't have the strength to shake them off. Learning this, the teens try to grab him, but Koro-sensei speeds off and easily dodges their attack. Meanwhile, Irina also learns about the school festival and makes plans to take down the creature. Days later, the school festival holds with students and spectators from all walks of life tripping in for the event. Not to draw attention, Koro-sensei disguises as a clown while keeping a close eye on his students. Meters from the event, Red Eye arrives at the scene and sets his sights on the creature. After setting up his rifle, the sniper takes a clean shot at Koro-sensei, but the teacher easily evades the attack and runs off in the opposite direction. Later that day, a handful of Class 3E students organize a play with Koro-sensei as the guest star. However, this performance turns out to be a ruse for them to unalive him without arousing suspicion. Irina sees this as a great opportunity to strike and tries to limit Koro-sensei's movements during the play by getting a large audience to fill the auditorium. To achieve this, Irina seduces men with kisses, an action Nagisa finds very strange. When the high schooler questions her about it, the mercenary reveals seduction is a very important tool in every hitman's arsenal. That afternoon, the play begins, and Koro-sensei disguises himself as a peach on stage. As part of the performance, the students try to unalive their teacher, but Koro-sensei sees through their ploy and darts around the stage. Meanwhile, at the back of the auditorium, Red Eye targets the creature from a distance and is seconds from pulling the trigger when Koro-sensei appears in front of him. Within seconds, the teacher changes the sniper's clothes into a funny-looking costume and brings him on stage. Moments later, the play draws to a close, and Koro-sensei flees from the scene. Irina arrives just as the play ends and is disappointed to realize she missed her chance to attack the teacher. Meanwhile, at the other end of the festival, the rest of Class 3E run a food stand to make some money. Hours before the event closes, 3 of the students are abducted by teens from another school. When the rest of the class receives word of this, they split up and search the area for their missing classmates. Karma and another student find them tied up in an abandoned warehouse and confront the boys behind the kidnapping. A fight ensues, and the Class 3E duo quickly gains the upper hand. However, when one of the boys threatens to unalive the hostages, the 2 boys get distracted, allowing the kidnappers to knock them out. Luckily, Kuro-sensei arrives in the nick of time and scares the abductors off with his super speed. After freeing his students, the teens leave the warehouse and return to school as the festival comes to a close. Though all the plans to take out Kuro-sensei during the festival failed, the day is far from over. Out of nowhere, Keano, one of the Class 3E students, reveals she has tentacles and launches a sneak attack on Kuro-sensei. She corners the teacher in a corridor and bursts open a pipe, spilling water to slow down his movement while attacking him from a distance. However, Kaneo's attacks don't last long, as the broken pipe sets off an alarm, stunning her for a few seconds. Kuro-sensei uses this time to escape and joins Keano on the roof. Seeing the teacher, Keano loses her cool and accuses him of ending someone's life in cold blood. Right then, the girl reveals her true identity. It turns out Keano is, in fact, the sister of Yukimura, Class 3E's former teacher. She blames Kuro-sensei for her sister's death and vows to enact her revenge by unaliving him. Before the teacher can respond, Keano flees the scene while the rest of the students watch in awe. Once she leaves, the high schoolers question Kuro-sensei's past and wonder if he really is guilty of Keano's claims. That night, the tentacled girl recalls what happened during the day and is determined to end her teacher once and for all. While Keano plans her next attack, she reminisces about the past and recounts how she got the tentacles. In a flashback scene, we see Keano visiting Yukimura in a research facility, only to find her unalived body next to Kuro-sensei. Before Keano could stop him, the creature rushed out of the premises, leaving her to believe he was responsible for her sister's demise. Next to Yukimura's lifeless body, Keano spots a serum and injects herself with it, gaining tentacles in the process. After obtaining her newly found powers, the bereaved sister resolves to hunt Kuro-sensei down and enact her revenge. To achieve this, she enrolled in Class 3E and has spent the last few months learning his weaknesses while waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. The following day, Keano returns to school and challenges the teacher to a 1v1 duel. Kuro-sensei accepts, but before the fight starts, Nagisa steps in and asks Keano to hear the teacher's side of the story. However, the bereaved sister is blinded by rage and refuses to give Kuro-sensei a chance to explain himself. She whips out her fire-coated tentacles and uses them to slash at the teacher. For a long while, Kuro-sensei manages to dodge her attacks. However, Keano soon gets a clean shot and pierces the creature straight in the chest. Seeing his teacher in danger, Nagisa brainstorms ways to distract Keano and recalls Irina's lesson about seduction. Using this, he sneaks up behind the tentacled girl and pulls her in for a kiss. Keano is stunned by the gesture and loses focus for a brief second, allowing Kuro-sensei a chance to pull out her tentacles. After Keano has been defeated, she loses consciousness and is surrounded by her classmates, who run to check on her. When she finally wakes up, the bereaved sister is no longer angry, and Kuro-sensei is given a chance to explain his side of the story. For the first time, the tentacled creature opens up to the class about his past and tells them the story of how he came to be. In a flashback scene, we discover that Kuro-sensei used to be a normal human named Shinigami. Shinigami was a perfect hitman and had gained a reputation in the underworld as the god of death due to his lethal nature. One day, after completing an assignment, the hitman is captured by mercenaries sent by a rogue research organization. Thanks to Shinigami's reputation, the Institute views him as the perfect subject to carry out research on due to his ideal body and sound mind. After his capture, the researchers, spearheaded by a psycho-scientist named Yanagisawa, test an unknown material on him. The mystery substance, referred to as antimatter, is theorized to be a powerful energy source with the potential to replace all forms of fuel. However, the substance can only work in living organisms and requires ample research before it can be certified for use. As a result, Shinigami is given antimatter and closely monitored to observe the effects on his body. Before long, the hitman begins experiencing anatomical changes and starts developing powers. Soon, another scientist is appointed to monitor him, and this turns out to be none other than Keano's sister, Yukimura. Over the course of the study, the scientist and Shinigami grow closer and begin developing feelings for each other. Yukimura tells the hitman all about her life and reveals her family forced her into an engagement with Yanagisawa as a payment for an old debt. The psycho-scientist is very mean to Yukimura, but sadly, there isn't much she can do about the situation. Later on, the connection between Shinigami and Yukimura only grows stronger. When a conversation about their work life comes up, Yukimura explains she's a teacher during the day and a scientist by night. She tells Shinigami all about the kids in Class 3E and expresses a deep desire to help them. Confined as a lab rat, the months fly past for Shinigami, and soon, the hitman realizes he's spent a year as a prisoner. To cheer him up, Yukimura gets Shinigami a tie as an anniversary present, and the duo shares a heartfelt moment. Recounting their experiences in the past year, Yukimura reveals she wasn't able to do much for her students and expresses regrets over her failings as a teacher. However, Yukimura doesn't give up hope and vows to do better in the next school year. Meanwhile, at the opposite end of the facility, an emergency alarm goes off. Yanagisawa heads over to the control room and receives some catastrophic news. Besides Shinigami, it turns out the research team had also tested the antimatter on a rat and sent it to the moon prior to the hitman's abduction. Months later, the scientists discover that the antimatter has mutated the animal, generating a massive explosion that destroyed 70% of the moon. With this finding, the researchers figure the energy alternative is highly unstable and is bound to generate a planet-shattering blast when left in a subject for too long. Discovering this, the scientists theorize Shinigami is mere months away from combusting and taking out 70% of the Earth with him. To prevent this from happening, Yanagisawa orders the hitman be unalived. Luckily, Yukimura overhears this conversation and reports to Shinigami before the scientists get to him. Thanks to his newly found powers, the hitman breaks through reinforced glass and escapes his cell. Yanagisawa receives reports of Shinigami's prison break and activates an automated weapon to end him. Looking to protect the hitman, Yukimura races into the room and tries to stop the mad scientist. However, Yanagisawa easily overpowers her and repeatedly kicks her in the gut. At the other end of the facility, Shinigami develops numerous tentacles and goes on a rampage. Sadly, the tentacles have an adverse effect on the hitman's brain and cause him to grow increasingly violent. After several minutes of constant rampage, Yukimura arrives and hugs Shinigami from behind to jerk him out of his maddened state. However, this proves to be a fatal mistake as the weapon designed to unalive Shinigami goes off and lands on Yukimura. The high school teacher is fatally wounded and has zero chance of surviving the attack. Seeing Yukimura injured, Shinigami snaps out of his rampage and gently holds her body. With her dying breath, Yukimura bids Shinigami goodbye and asks him to take care of her students. Vowing to fulfill her last wish, Shinigami retrieves the tie she bought for him and flees the scene. After his escape, the hitman's tentacles completely change his body structure and transform him into an octopus-like creature. Abandoning his life of crime, Shinigami changes his identity and starts his new life as a teacher. After narrating the story, Kuro-sensei reveals he'll be dying from the antimatter explosion in a few months. This explains why the teacher is enthusiastic for his students to unalive him, since his death would save the Earth from destruction. Thanks to Kuro-sensei's explanation, Keano realizes he isn't to blame for her sister's demise and finally abandons her revenge plot. Days after learning their teacher's origin story, the class is torn over their next course of action. For months, the teens believe Kuro-sensei intended to destroy the planet. However, after discovering the secret of his past, they realize he has no control over the impending explosion. As a result, Nagisa suggests the class abandon their mission to unalive him and instead focus on finding a cure to save his life and stop him from exploding. Though half of the class agrees, the other half, spearheaded by Karma, isn't on board with the plan. The latter half believes the best way to honor Kuro-sensei is to accept his wishes and take him out as originally planned. Hellbent on their respective views, both factions are determined to have their way, prompting tensions to rise in the class. After several minutes of back and forth, both groups realize the other side won't budge and arrange a fight to settle the dispute. Nagisa and Karma are selected to represent their groups, and a fierce brawl ensues between the two boys. The fight has only one rule: whoever pokes their opponent with a knife wins. Once the battle begins, Nagisa takes a more direct approach and leads with a head-on attack. Being the best fighter in class, Karma easily blocks his opponent's strikes and sends his blade flying to the ground. With Nagisa disarmed, Karma sees an opening to attack and lunges at him. Though Nagisa isn't the best fighter, he isn't a slacker either. The faction leader blocks Karma's strike and deals some damage after nailing a kick to his face. Stunned by the attack, the elite fighter stalls for a brief second, allowing Nagisa to race toward the knife. However, Karma quickly recovers and stops him before he can retrieve the weapon. With both blades out of their hands, the two boys resort to a fist fight. This turns the tides in Karma's favor as the trained fighter dog walks Nagisa through the match. Realizing he's no match for his opponent, the beaten faction leader traps Karma in a hug and pleads with him to stop. Nagisa's appeal deeply moves Karma and gets him to stop the fight. After the match, Nagisa takes a more peaceful approach to a solution and suggests a compromise. Rather than entirely abandon their original mission, the faction leader proposes they continue trying to eliminate Kuro-sensei while simultaneously searching for a cure to stop him from exploding. The entire class agrees to the compromise, and the conflict is ultimately settled. In their search for the cure, the students have Ritsu, an advanced AI machine, scour the internet for useful info. The automated robot hacks into an international submits database and obtains classified info about Kuro-sensei's case. It turns out the students aren't the first people to search for a solution, as several scientists around the world were also on a hunt to find a cure. However, all efforts to do so had proved abortive. Apparently, the researchers' repeated failures were a result of insufficient data, as all of Kuro-sensei's records from his experiment days are now missing. Since they can't develop a cure without it, the students brainstorm ways to find Yanagisawa's location and retrieve Kuro-sensei's original files. Itona, the ex-tentacle mutant, reveals he knows where the mad scientist is hiding and leads the students to his secret lab later that day. The group breaks into the research facility at night and, with Ritsu's help, hacks into the system and steals a chip containing all the info they need. Right as the students leave the facility, an upside-down figure appears and watches them from a distance. After securing Kuro-sensei's original files, the teens begin formulating a cure. The students try out multiple chemicals, and after a series of failures, they finally stumble upon a cure. After making the medicine, the teens head home, hoping to hand it to Kuro-sensei the next day. Meanwhile, over at the Ministry of Defense, world leaders are growing increasingly impatient and decide to take matters into their own hands. The defense officials invent a satellite-powered superweapon and devise a plan to end Kuro-sensei once and for all. The following day, while the teacher is alone in class, the Defense Ministry launches a weapon that covers the area with an impenetrable force field. Though safe for humans, the barrier is lethal to Kuro-sensei and traps him within the school. Meters from the area, the students head to school but are captured by security officials. The teens try to fight them off, but the security personnel outnumber them and throw them in a cell. There, Karasuma arrives and briefs them about the situation. The defense agent explains the government orchestrated an elaborate scheme to eliminate Kuro-sensei, and plans to blast a satellite laser to take him out by midnight. The students are appalled to hear this and inform Karasuma they've invented a cure to save their teacher. However, the defense agent reveals the world leaders have abandoned the use of a cure as a viable option and unanimously agreed the safest choice would be to eradicate Kuro-sensei. The students are disappointed to hear this but resolve to save their teacher no matter what. Once Karasuma leaves, the students brainstorm ways to escape their cell. They reach out to Ritsu for help, but the AI machine is low on energy and isn't of much use. Luckily, Karma notices that the rocks in the cell are made up of explosive matter, and the students use this to create a small bomb. When the blast goes off, a pair of soldiers race to the site and find all the students passed out on the floor. Right as the guards enter the cell to check on them, the teens ambush and restrain them. Free from their prison, the group darts through the chamber but runs into Karasuma on their way out. Rather than try to capture them, the security agent lets them go and wishes them luck on their mission. After thanking him, the students make their way outside, only to discover they're in the middle of an army base. Luckily, Irina arrives just in time and creates a distraction for the kids to escape the camp. The mercenary uses a bazooka to fire several shots around the camp, drawing the soldiers' attention. Thanks to the students' combat training, they are well equipped for the chaotic scene and face no problems in handling the soldiers. After taking out several guards, the high schoolers set their sights on the top official. The army executive tries to flee the scene in a van, but Nagisa acts as a decoy and stands in front of the oncoming car. Right as the car is about to hit him, Karma and Itona send a set of cylinders rolling, causing the vehicle to divert and crash. Once the soldiers had been defeated, the students race to school and find Kuro-sensei in one of the classes. Wasting no time, they hand over the cure to the teacher and make him drink it. Having taken the cure, the students ask Kuro-sensei to use his super speed to escape the force field. Sadly, the teacher reveals he has tried to break out of the barrier multiple times but failed with every attempt. Accepting his fate, Kuro-sensei declares there is nothing he can do to escape the imminent danger. As a parting gift, the teacher brings out a handful of graduation certificates and prepares to hand them over to the students. However, before he can issue the diplomas, a tentacle shows up out of nowhere and destroys the documents. Turning to the direction of the attacker, Kuro-sensei is appalled to find Yanagisawa standing at the other end of the class. The mad scientist reveals he also injected himself with antimatter to gain powers and seek revenge against the ex-hitman for destroying his lab. The students try to deter Yanagisawa from fighting Kuro-sensei and explain they gave their teacher a cure to stop him from exploding. Hearing this, the psycho-scientist drops a massive bombshell on the high schoolers. Yanagisawa explains he was aware of the students' break-in into his lab and switched out Kuro-sensei's original records for fake ones. As a result, the cure they formulated was also fake and wouldn't stop their teacher from exploding. While the students take a moment to process this news, Yanagisawa injects himself with more antimatter shots and transforms into an overpowered supermonster. With one slash, the psycho-scientist takes out a couple of Kuro-sensei's tentacles and a large chunk of his head. The matchup quickly becomes less of a fight and more of a beatdown as Yanagisawa sends the teacher flying in every direction. When the psycho-scientist moves to make the finishing blow, Keano steps in to protect Kuro-sensei and is dealt a lethal strike. Realizing his student is minutes away from dying, the once bubbly teacher goes absolutely berserk and vows to take down Yanagisawa. Using the last of his strength, Kuro-sensei charges up and fires a massive explosion at his target. The energy blast is vicious and destroys everything in its path, including Yanagisawa, who vaporizes into thin air. After the enemy has been defeated, Kuro-sensei works to bring Keano back from the brink of death. Thanks to his tragic experience with Yukimura, the tentacled teacher has learned several healing techniques, including surgery, to prevent his loved ones from experiencing a similar fate. Luckily, Kuro-sensei is skilled in his craft and does just enough to save Keano's life. Once the surgery is completed, the teacher is entirely out of energy and lies flat on the ground. With minutes left to midnight, the satellite laser is scheduled to destroy Kuro-sensei soon. Rather than be defeated by a government weapon, the teacher asks the class to unalive him. The high schoolers initially refuse, but when Kuro-sensei reminds them he'd be eliminated either way, they reluctantly agree to go through with it. The students all hold down their teacher's tentacles and appoint Nagisa to deal the final blow. Before Kuro-sensei goes, he thanks the kids for the time they spent together and delivers a heartfelt goodbye speech. After bidding him farewell, Nagisa pierces the teacher's heart with a blade, finally saving the planet and completing their months-long mission. As Kuro-sensei takes his final breath, he congratulates them on passing the class and transforms into an aura ball that drifts from the scene. The movie ends several years in the future with Nagisa pursuing a career as a teacher and ultimately applying all the skills he learnt from Kuro-sensei to impact the future generation. If you enjoyed my movie recap, do let me know in the comments below and please subscribe and like the video for more recaps like this. Also don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a future video. And until next time guys, take care.